In this section then, we're going to be looking at the stages that you need to go through to get your app uploaded to the App Store and share it with the world. We're going to start by looking at creating app icons and launch images, which are necessary for any app. Then we'll go on and create some screenshots for your app. Then we'll see how to test your app on a real iOS device. And finally, we'll go through the submission process. So if you've already got your app icons, launch images, and you've tested it on a real device, then feel free to jump to the last video in this section and we'll take you through the upload process. Before we start though, I'm going to encourage you to Google Apple Interface Guidelines, because Apple has some great guidelines for quality apps and quality user experience. And before you submit or even really start creating any app, it's well worth having a look at these and just getting really clear and making sure that your app is going to keep users happy and offer a great experience. So assuming that's the case, I'd do a quick Google of Apple app icon sizes, and that shows you the various sizes you need to create for your app icon. And here we go. You can see the dimensions there. They're not all the ones we need though. There are some spotlight and settings icons that you'll need as well. So one option, if you're good with Photoshop, is to simply resize your icon to each of these sizes and export different files. And that's a perfectly good option. But there is a bit of a shortcut. And if you Google Create App Icon Images iOS, then you'll get several results there. And I'm just going to use the first one, which will automatically generate icons of the right sizes for you with a single click. So let's use this and see how it works. So I'm just going to grab a cat icon because we're going to be submitting the good old Cat Years app that we built way back at the beginning of the course. Now, obviously, if you're actually submitting to the App Store, then you very much need to own the copyright of any image that you use as your icon. But for testing purposes, it's fine to just try out with any old image. So I'm going to control click and save image as. And cat icon is a perfectly good name. So one quick thing to show you, which I think we saw earlier in the course, is that if you load up your caticon.png or your icon file in preview, you can actually do resizing directly in preview. So if you want to change your image to 80 by 80, for example, then you can do that right here in preview. You don't need Photoshop or any fancy software to do that. To save us having to do that lots of times though, let's use makeappicon.com and click the button to upload our cat icon image. And then it will upload and do all the processing for you. And there we go. So we're going to go for the iOS icons. You do need to enter an email address there, but you don't have to subscribe to the newsletter, and I'm not going to download the Apple Watch icons. Feel free to share on Facebook or tweet, and then wait a few moments and jump over to your inbox, and you should have an email from makeappicon@oursky.com, and you can then download your cat icons directly from your email. Okay, so now let's jump over to our desktop in Finder and look for our icons. There they are. So caticon.zip. And we want iOS. And you can see we've got icons for iTunes, which we'll be using later on. And we've got a lovely whole range of different sizes for our app icon. Wonderful. So now it's just a matter of adding them to our app in Xcode. And we do that in the Assets folder. So load that up and then tap on app icon and then bring in the ones that you need. Notice that this is an iPhone app, so we don't need as many different types as we would if it was iPhone and iPad. So now if we go back over to Finder, we should be able to drag in the right sizes. Tricky to see it all in once, but here we go. So 29 by 29, 2x goes there. 29 by 29, 3x goes there. And then 40, 2x goes there. 43x goes there. 62x and 63x. There we go. So as I say, you're very welcome to create these manually yourself, but it does save a lot of time to just use the service that generates them all for you. Now for the launch screen images, you'll notice here, as it happens, I've got a launch screen storyboard. So you can, if you want to have a fancy launch screen, add objects on it just like a view controller, but most of the time you're more likely to want to just have an image that shows when the app is launching. So if you go back over to the app general settings, you can then change launch images source to use an asset catalog. And then if you go back over to assets, you should now see both app icon and launch image. Depending on your settings, you may not need to do that step, but I thought I'd show you the process anyway. So now we've got our spaces to copy our launch images into. Let's generate some launch images. Now these ones need to be rather more carefully produced than the app icons because you need to work for portrait and landscape. You probably just don't want to scale them up for different devices. So if you do a quick Google for launch images iOS to get the right sizes that you need, and it's definitely worth a read of that, particularly this idea, which isn't as clear to many people as it should be, that the launch screen really should be little more than a screen that's nearly identical to the first screen of your app. So it feels just like a step towards the loading of your app rather than something completely different. Obviously, not all apps behave that way, but that's definitely what Apple recommend. So one easy way to do that is to create a screenshot of your app. And we can actually do that in the simulator. So if we jump over to the simulator now, there we go. I'm going to click Edit and Copy Screen. And that will then copy the image to your clipboard. To save that to a file, you can then open up Preview and click File, New from Clipboard. And then you've got your image. And we'll save that as a cat years screenshot. There we go. So now over here in launch images, you can see we've got options for iPad, which are not particularly relevant for us. So if we bring in the context menu on the right, then let's get rid of those iPad options and just bring in our iPhone. Now, depending on what versions of iOS you want to support, you're going to need different sizes. So I'll just stick with iOS 8 and later. And then if we go back over to the Finder, there's our cat years screenshot, and then drag that in. I took that screenshot on the iPhone 6s, which is a 4.7 inch screen. So I'm going to use that one for the 4.7 inch. And then if you want to get launch images for the 5.5, then just run this on the iPhone 6s Plus, and that will give you that image. And if you need to support landscape, portrait, etc., then you'll need to generate launch images for those sizes as well. So it's worth saying briefly, I don't really recommend copying your screen exactly, mostly because that will confuse the user when they try and interact with it and then realize it's just an image. But if you remove some of the interactive elements, then it does work quite well, and it does give the feeling that your app is loading really fast rather than they're just looking at a launch image. So that's how I'd recommend creating launch images for your apps. Now let's go on and see how we can run our app on a real iOS device.